Number 1. The spider silk. First aid. You've got a bad gash from a sharp rock or a slip down a muddy bank. You need to close the wound, but you're miles from any kind of medical help. This is where one of the most brilliant and unsettling survival hacks comes in. Our ancestors would find a large spider web. The bigger and more intricate, the better. They would carefully collect the silk and use it to pack the wound. Now this sounds like an instant infection waiting to happen, but it's actually a genius move. Spider silk is not only a natural antiseptic, but it also has powerful blood clotting properties. It contains vitamin K, which is a key component in the clotting process, and the sticky, fibrous nature of the silk itself would help seal the wound and stop the bleeding. It's like a biological Band-Aid and coagulant all in one, straight from nature's darkest corners. It was also sterile because most spiders produce a natural antibacterial agent to keep their web from growing mold. They were basically using a biological supermaterial to prevent bleeding out. Number 2. The caveman's alarm clock. You're deep in an unfamiliar cave, and the last thing you want is to be surprised by an unwelcome visitor in the middle of the night, be it a predator or a rival tribe. Our ancestors, however, had a clever, low-tech way of setting a perimeter alarm. They'd take a few small, hollow gourds or dried animal bladders and fill them with a handful of small pebbles or nuts. Then they'd hang these makeshift rattles on thin vines or tripwires at key entry points to their shelter. The slightest disturbance, a heavy footstep, a clumsy animal, or a person trying to sneak in, would cause the tripwire to jiggle, sending the gourds into a noisy, rattling fit. It was a simple, elegant solution that used basic physics to turn a potential sneak attack into a full-blown wake-up call. This wasn't just a burglar alarm, it was a psychological weapon. Imagine being a predator, creeping in for a meal, only to trigger a sudden, chaotic noise in the pitch black. The surprise alone would be enough to deter most intruders. So the next time you set an alarm on your phone, just remember that your ancestors' version was a lot more intense and a lot less customizable than a gentle chime. Number 3. The blood water purifier. Okay, this one is pretty gross, but it works. You're thirsty, and all you have is a stagnant, murky pool of water that looks like it could have a few thousand different kinds of bacteria swimming in it. Drinking it would mean a high-risk game of, will I get dysentery? Ancient survivors, however, had a morbid but effective solution. They would take a small amount of blood from a freshly killed animal, or sometimes even their own, if they were desperate, and mix it into the foul water. This sounds insane, but there's a scientific reason for it. The iron and other particles in the blood would act as a coagulant. Over time, the impurities in the water, the dirt, the grime, the little bits of who knows what, would bind to the blood particles and settle at the bottom. You could then carefully ladle or pour the clearer top layer of water off and drink it. It wouldn't be perfectly pure, and it would definitely still taste a bit metallic, but it would be 1,000 times safer than drinking the original murky cocktail. It's a disgusting but effective ancient version of a Brita filter. Number 4. The fire-stuffed log. You're in the bitter cold and your fire is dying. You have no way of keeping a proper flame going all night, so what do? Our ancestors had a way of turning a simple log into a portable, long-lasting ember that was a lifesaver in frigid conditions. They would take a large dried log and hollow out a channel down the center. Then they'd pack this channel with tinder and glowing embers from their fire. They'd seal the ends with mud or clay, creating a sort of primitive, slow-burning lantern. This wasn't for light, though. The log would smolder from the inside out, preserving the precious embers for hours, sometimes even overnight. In the morning, they could just crack open the log, blow on the still glowing material inside, and restart their fire without the hassle of making a brand new spark. It's a genius application of basic thermodynamics. By limiting the oxygen, you slow down the combustion to a crawl. It's the original thermos, but instead of keeping your coffee hot, it kept your fire alive. This trick meant the difference between a warm, safe night and a freezing one. Basically, they were turning a log into a biological battery pack for fire. Number 5. The secret of poison, arrowhead plants. You're a hunter in a time before supermarkets, and you need to take down some game. You don't have a modern rifle, so you're using a bow and arrow. but you want to make sure your arrows are as effective as possible. Ancient hunters had a way of doing this that seems incredibly dangerous, but was shockingly effective. They would find specific plants known to be toxic, like certain types of nightshade or other local flora with known poisonous properties, and use the sap to tip their arrows. Now, this sounds like a recipe for self-poisoning, but here's the trick. They didn't want to kill the animal with the poison. They just wanted to make it sick enough to slow down. The idea was to weaken the prey so they could track and finish the job without the risk of a chase that would exhaust them or lead to a lost kill. The poison wasn't a lethal dose. It was a paralytic. It made the animal dizzy, disoriented, or just plain sluggish. It was a calculated risk that turned a normal hunting trip into a high-stakes medical experiment. So the next time you hear a cautionary tale about poisonous plants, just remember that some of our ancestors saw them not as a threat, but as a tactical advantage. They were basically using bioweapons to get dinner. Number 6, the sun-powered compass. Imagine being in the middle of a dense forest. The sun is a vague haze above the tree canopy, and you have no idea which way is north. Modern, you would just pull out your phone and complain about the lack of service. Ancient you, however, had a hack that was part physics, part clever observation. They would take a small, flat piece of wood or a leaf and place it in a bowl of water. Then they'd watch for a tiny, shimmering point of light on the water's surface. A reflection of the sun, no matter how faint. The direction this little speck of light moved would tell them where the sun was, and by extension, which direction was east and west. They could then use this information to orient themselves. It's not a perfect north-finding compass, but it's a brilliant way to use the most basic tools to determine a cardinal direction. The best part? It relies on the fact that light, even diffuse light, still follows the same basic rules of reflection. So while you might not be able to see the sun, your improvised puddle compass could. It was basically a low-tech, water-based GPS for people who hadn't even invented the wheel yet. Number 7, making a ghostly smoke signal. You're lost. All you have is some half-rotten wood and a desperate need to signal for help. Your fire is pathetic, your smoke is wispy, and you're pretty sure a passing bird just laughed at you. Well, ancient survivors had a fix for this, and it's about as eerie as it is effective. They would find a small, hollow log or piece of bark, stuff it with wet leaves or moss, and then bury it just beneath their fire. As the fire burned, the heat would slowly smolder the wet plant material underneath, creating a column of thick, white smoke that was far more visible and long-lasting than anything a normal fire could produce. The result was a ghostly, almost supernatural-looking cloud that could be seen for miles. It's a simple trick of thermodynamics. You're basically creating a controlled, low-oxygen burn, which produces more smoke and less flame. The best part? The smoke looks unnatural, almost like a supernatural signal, which would have made it stand out even more to anyone on the lookout. So the next time you get lost and need to signal for help, just know that your ancestors' secret weapon was basically a haunted barbecue pit. Number 8, the ancient bee sting. Cure. Imagine you're wandering through some unforgiving wilderness, maybe with a minor cough or a fever you picked up from a questionable puddle. Now, your ancient ancestors didn't have Tylenol, so they had to get creative. One of their favorite remedies for a wide range of illnesses, from respiratory issues to plain old aches, was getting stung by bees. Yes, on purpose. But not just any bee sting. It was a full-on, ceremonial bee stinging session, sometimes on the throat, other times on the chest. The belief was that the bee venom, or apitoxin, had a magical purifying effect that would drive out the sickness. And here's the wild part. They weren't entirely wrong. Modern science has since discovered that bee venom contains a compound called melittin, which has powerful anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. It's not going to cure a full-blown bacterial infection, but it can reduce swelling and fight off some types of microbes. So when your great-great-great-great-grandpappy got a bee to sting his chest to help with a cough, what he was really doing was giving his immune system a little kick in the pants. Basically, your nervous system was getting a live-action, biological tutorial on what to do during an emergency. He was weaponizing the world's tiniest, angriest first aid kit.